P4实验室是目前世界上生物安全等级最高的实验室，也是最安全的实验室。实验室的建成，标志着我们国家的科研人员能够在自己的实验室当中开展烈性病毒的一些研究工作。
Before the pandemic, much of the world had never heard of the term gain of function. Put simply, it's genetically manipulating a virus to give it new functions, like the ability to infect humans. That's what was happening inside the Wuhan lab.
You know, there's quite a logical explanation when you look at the virus and its special characteristics. That, you know, this is the result of taking a natural virus and mucking around with it.
COVID-19 is like a Frankenstein virus, and it looked to many scientists like it had been cobbled together, because it has a bat virus backbone with a pangolin virus spike protein and a unique furin cleavage site in the same spot where Chinese scientists were genetically tweaking viruses.
For those who keep bringing up, you know, the possibility of a bat in the wild markets in Wuhan having been the source of COVID-19, scientifically that has really no merit because it can't infect bats. So it couldn't have come straight across from a bat if it can't infect a bat.
If COVID-19 was the result of gain of function or other risky experiments at the Wuhan lab, remember this: that same lab was being partly funded by America.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement.
Take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans,
right.
You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly, and I want to say that officially.
Dr. Anthony Fauci is America's top medical advisor. I found a scientific paper he wrote in 2012 where he argued the benefits of gain-of-function research were worth the risk of a pandemic. In total, American agencies funded 65 research projects at the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
So you don't want to go to Hoboken, New Jersey, or to Fairfax, Virginia, to be studying the bat-human interface that might lead to an outbreak. So you go to China.
Are you concerned at all about how it happened that the gain-of-function ban was lifted during the Trump administration? How was it that Anthony Fauci was able to do this without anyone knowing?
Well, I don't know for sure who all was involved in that decision-making process. I can say this much. When we look back and figure out how that decision was made, I hope that all of those parties were able to come to the table, express their viewpoints, their concerns, so that we had not only a decision, but an informed decision that was made. I've seen very little evidence to date that there was a broad-based information exchange before the decision was made by Dr. Fauci to lift that ban on gain-of-function research.
Mr. President Anthony Fauci, did he ever once mention to you that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was genetically manipulating coronaviruses?
Well, no, he didn't. And, you know, Anthony's been in government for many, many years. He's a bureaucratic kind of a guy, a very great promoter. I give him an A+ as a promoter and probably a C or a D as a doctor.
We now know from emails that have been released under the Freedom of Information Act that he was getting his advice from the likes of Peter Daszak, a Wuhan collaborator. At the same time, he was telling you that this was a natural virus. while at the same time, behind the scenes in emails, he was having discussions about whether this might have been genetically manipulated. Does that shock you?
Well, he was dealing with them, certainly, and my thing was a little bit different. I just wanted to stop it. Whether it developed one way or the other, I just wanted to stop it.
But it's important to know where it came from. It's extremely important to know how it developed.
Fauci was dealing with them, and I guess they were even making payments for certain kinds of research. And I ended that, too. I stopped that. When we found out about that, he was doing that during the Obama years. And when I found out about it, I said, can you imagine that the United States is making payments to a Chinese lab? So just that on its face didn't make sense, but I stopped that.
The Obama administration did hit pause on gain-of-function research, though, and that was lifted under your watch. Why did you allow the gain-of-function research to continue?
Well, I think probably people that worked for me looked at it, and at one point they might have done that, but ultimately what we did was we shut it off. We shut the whole thing off, and we stopped making payments that were approved much earlier than our administration.
Do you regret now not paying closer attention? I mean, this gain-of-function research is extremely risky, you know, banned under the Obama administration and then kick-started in 2017 under your watch.
Yeah, no, I think we've done an incredible job between the vaccine and between all of the Operation Warp Speed. I think we did a great job, and people are now starting to see what a great job we did.
While writing my book, I discovered a crucial piece of the COVID-19 puzzle. Cybersecurity analysts at Internet 2.0 recovered Chinese government data that had been virtually wiped from the web. It showed there was a buy-up of PCR equipment used to test for coronaviruses in Wuhan in 2019. The next month, one of those machines went to the Wuhan Institute. Is this something you're aware of, that they bought a PCR machine in November 2019?
I wouldn't be able to comment on that.
How significant would this purchase be?
Would be significant.
Is it a smoking gun?
Ultimately, I don't think there's ever going to be one specific smoking gun. I think there's more than just smoke here. I think there's fire from a whole bunch of different sources. I think that would be another compelling piece of evidence if you need more. I don't need more.
Mr. President, I just want to ask you about this idea that the Wuhan Institute of Virology has strong ties to the Chinese military and was working on secret projects with the Chinese military. Do you think SARS-CoV-2 was developed as a bioweapon?
So, I'd like to think it wasn't, and I'll probably have to leave it at that because I want to give the benefit of a doubt. And China was also affected by it, so I really don't think it was, but nobody can really know for sure, and certainly now most of that evidence is gone, and it's going to be very hard to find out.
That evidence was the viral database which was taken offline by the Institute. There's also early samples that were destroyed and the people who disappeared. But what is very evident is the lab's close ties to the Chinese military.
It's definitely possible that the Chinese have been working on a bioweapon. Their labs affiliated with the PLA have been working on coronaviruses as either a bioweapon or as a defense against a potential bioweapon. And they've, published papers in China about both aspects, saying that, oh, we can weaponize coronaviruses. That actually would make a good bioweapon. And also they published papers that said we have to be prepared for a potential, released bioweapon. Whether this precise, virus is the result of a bioweapons program, I highly doubt it, but I could not rule it out.
Nor is David Asher ruling it out. In fact, the former COVID-19 investigator believes something went badly wrong inside the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
My concern was that the Chinese were doing research in, as we learned later, quite uncontrolled circumstances that was most definitely related to biological warfare ambitions in the future, and that they had had an accident of a secretive program that they never wanted anyone to know about because it was a weapon, and the weapon had gotten released errantly. I mean, it was like someone dropping a nuclear weapon out the back of a B-52 and bombing some city and saying, whoops, we didn't mean for that to occur.
Do you think this was an accidental or deliberate release of COVID-19 from China?
So I think it was probably an accident. I don't think it was on purpose. If it was, that's essentially war. I don't think it was on purpose. I think it was incompetence. Scientists walked out and had lunch outside in a park or something with the girlfriend, and he had it and she had it.
Was that patient zero, that scientist from the lab?
I don't know if it's patient zero or patient something else, but that's one theory.
Do you know how he was infected?
I think that it was incompetence. I think that it escaped from the lab through incompetence. And they've also had some safety problems, as you know, at that lab.
Has the United States spoken to defectors who worked in the lab, who blew the whistle on what happened?
I really can't talk about that. Yeah, I cannot talk about that. I won't be really allowed to talk, nor would I want to.
Few people in our nation's history have been more challenged or found a time more challenging or difficult than the time we're in now. Once-in-a-century virus that silently stalks the country.
Almost 4 months after becoming president, Joe Biden ordered a probe into the origins of COVID-19. The results, inconclusive. The report found 2 causes plausible. Either it came from a lab or an infected animal. Is there still major intelligence that goes to proving the virus came out of the Wuhan Institute of Virology that's still not in the public domain?
Yes, there's compelling intelligence that hasn't been declassified. When you declassify intelligence, you risked, the potential human sources or signals intelligence, where your eyes and ears to their actions are coming from. And so we put out as much as we felt we could safely do at the time, but I think the time has come for the Biden administration to declassify additional information that would, again, more evidence if you need it, that Chinese Communist Party officials acted badly, bullied international officials, covered up intelligence and reporting on this. There is more intelligence out there, and I'd like to see it declassified because it'll create additional pressure, not just on Chinese Communist Party officials, but others that still continue to deny that China is a bad actor here.
We had an opportunity in January 2020 to eradicate this virus out of the whole human population, and that's really sad because, in 50 years' time, our children's children, might one day look back and say, why didn't anyone stop this virus when you had the opportunity in that first few weeks?
From his lab in Australia, Nikolai Petrovsky is developing a vaccine that's in phase 3 clinical trials. But he fears that COVID-19 may become a way of life.
So viruses are opportunists. They find themselves in this wonderful new host, of which there's billions. and it's learning as it goes. It started as an exquisite human pathogen. If we look now at strains like the Delta strain, you know, it's going from bad to worse. I mean, and this is what happens when you have something that is already the perfect human pathogen. It won't stop there because it's already, you know, has its foot in the door, and it can only get better over time. And that's what we're seeing, and that's why, you know, it's been so scary.
Is this what the future looks like?
If this virus is allowed to spread and disseminate, it's going to learn more tricks. It's going to become more infectious because that's the way viruses travel. They're opportunists. And it's going to reach a point where we'll never actually free ourselves because it's found we're such a wonderful host species, it doesn't ever want to leave.
How do you think this global pandemic, this crisis of a potential laboratory leak could impact on Chinese leadership?
Well, my view is that the implications of this for the PRC leadership are severe. There will be factions who are hugely dissatisfied with what has happened, with the way that Chinese reputation is damaged, the way that, you know, China now becomes something akin to an international pariah. So I think the consequences of this will be severe politically in China over the next 4 or 5 years. Watch this space. Something will give, something will happen. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if it brings Xi Jinping down, or at least there isn't a contest around his concept of leadership.
And as for two of the most senior members of the Trump administration, they are in no doubt about what really happened in Wuhan.
Well, listen, the people that had the most access to the most intelligence are telling you that the most likely origin of COVID-19, of the Wuhan virus, was what happened, was a lab leak at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. This is really most likely what happened, and it's more than just a possibility. It's certainly a probability, and it's probably a certainty.
The other thing that the cover-up tells you is the absolute absence of humanity of these leaders. They are willing to allow people to die. They don't care about human life. They don't value them the way that people in the West, in the United States and Australia do. They are prepared to let millions of people die if that's what it takes to protect their regime.